Welcome to The Confessional, the new show from Are You Not Entertained, brought to you by Pedal Labs, who are rewriting the playbook for fan engagement, most recently with the groundbreaking Connected British and Irish Lions jersey in collaboration with Connected Fanatics, proof that the future of sport is already here. In this series, Roger Mitchell is joined by a series of remarkable guests for conversations that tackle the questions most people avoid. Raw, revealing, and never predictable. If you want the kind of insight and honesty you simply won't find anywhere else, then join Roger for questions and answers that rarely see the light of day.
Welcome everyone to the latest episode of The Confessional. Today we are very lucky to have John Skipper join us. This is the best way to describe him. This is how he's described in Wikipedia. A visionary leader in the world of sports media and broadcasting, he has left an indelible mark on the landscape of that industry, content distribution and sports networks. Under his leadership, ESPN expanded its digital footprint, embraced new technologies and redefined how sports fans interacted with content. Skipper also played a role in expanding ESPN's reach globally, making it one of the most influential brands in sports media worldwide. John Skipper, welcome to The Confessional.
Thank you, Roger. It's nice to be here. This will officially be my first confession, not raised Catholic. You know, we didn't confess where I grew up. So I look forward to sharing with you my sins and getting a little absolution here.
Well, yes, I'm not sure I can do the absolution bit, but we'll definitely get into it. But one of the things I noticed from my research, John, straight up, was this quote: "Self-reflection isn't easy for me, particularly as a southerner, tightly wound with traditional values. I am not necessarily comfortable." So you're definitely on the wrong show here, John.
Well, you know, it's good. The new experiences are good experiences for the most part. And I look forward to working on some new muscles here.
Excellent. And I'd just like to say again, thank you so much for doing this. This is a real thrill. One of my personal heroes of my industry. So let's kick off straight away. For what and to whom do you need to ask forgiveness, John?
I found this to be quite interesting to think about. And as I thought about it, it occurred to me that, of course, in order to answer that question, you have to decide what it is you think requires forgiveness from someone. And the only thing it seems to me that you need to ask forgiveness for is wronging someone, not having the compassion you should have had or the understanding you should have had. I don't think of it in a, Protestant sense of I need to, we were laughing about confession, right? I don't think of it as that, right? I am confessing my unworthiness. And as I reflect on it, I don't feel like I have wronged that many people. It is one of the central principles of my life that I try to not hurt other people. I try not to be cutting. I do have a streak of sardonicism and sarcasm, but I'm not cutting. I don't tend to insult people. I don't tend to lack empathy. Doesn't mean there aren't some people I've wronged. I suppose the people I've wronged are the people who I've lacked understanding. And I think it's a seminal issue of today is that we've tended to pull back into the cocoons of our own belief system and believe that what we think is right and what other people think is wrong. So if I need to have other people forgive me, it's to forgive me for not being compassionate, not being understanding, right? We're at a moment in time in the United States where we're divided into camps. It's important that we try to forgive the other party for having points of view that we disagree with. Consequently, we must also forgive ourselves for not being more understanding. Particularly acute in the United States today. I was stuck in airports on Sunday. easy for me to be mad, to blame other people, to see someone with a red hat on and go, well, they're the ones that are causing the problem. So I need forgiveness for not being more understanding. I have hurt a few people, but not many people, in a couple of relationships. I'm a divorced human being, so clearly I need forgiveness from my ex-wife because I didn't end up doing everything I should have done. Now, many people don't, and I'm not suggesting anything dramatically profound other than we had a wonderful life together. We had 2 great kids. We are upwardly mobile Americans. We went from the edge of middle class to the upper middle class. So I did that with somebody, and I perhaps have a little regret that I didn't do everything, maybe more than a little regret, maybe a profound regret that I didn't do everything I should have. In business, I have very few people I need to ask for forgiveness. I bested some of them in negotiations or deals, but that's not, you don't ask forgiveness for that. You ask forgiveness for hurting someone else, for doing something to them that belittled them or made them feel bad or that demeaned them or that dehumanized them. And I don't have a lot of sense that I've left a trail of people behind me for whom I need to ask forgiveness.
Well, I would back that up, certainly from all the research that I did and what I know of you. In this confessional, I have to imagine a little bit the answers that the person will give to these questions to be a little bit ready. And here's the 2 things I thought you might say here. One of them was Bill Simmons, who a little bit was your Dauphin, if you want to call it that. You grew him up. You had a wonderful relationship at ESPN. A lot of the programs that you did together, Grantland, 30 for 30, are iconic. But then you fell out. I think, if I'm right, you fell out because he was a little bit like myself, a little bit gobby, as you say in England, a little bit opinionated. And would it be right to say that he was doing that and that was causing you some discomfort with your major sports leagues who he was commenting on? But the point about forgiveness with Bill was that you fell out, you ultimately got rid of him, and he feels really bad because you didn't do that yourself. You sent somebody else to do that.
Well, first, it's very astute, Roger. You are correct. And in fact, I did ask forgiveness from Bill Simmons, right? There is a rapprochement that we had. I went out to Los Angeles, confronted his concern that I believe was appropriate, that, it wasn't that I didn't tell him. I don't think he felt that was a thing that I needed to be forgiven for. I think the thing was the abruptness of it, was that I did it with a little bit of anger, and then I did it publicly. On the other hand, with all due respect, Mr. Simmons publicly did some things that I asked him not to do, and that I had a right to ask him not to do because I was his manager. And but Bill asked my forgiveness. Bill said, look, I know I was a handful. I'm sorry. I said, Bill, it was all worth it. We worked together for 14 years. I got a huge benefit out of the work he did, including the tone and attitude that he had, right? I mean, Bill is an anti-authoritarian guy. He is a renegade a bit. He is a trailblazer. So I benefited from the qualities that also made him do some things that caused me some aggravation. But I forgave him for that because I actually ultimately got benefit from it and benefited from it in a big way. But I asked his forgiveness and said, I'm sorry for the way that went down, and I hope it doesn't mean that we can't be friends going forward. There's a podcast. We stayed on. We had a podcast for like 90 minutes.
I heard it.
Yeah, where we basically put our arms back around each other and said,
it was beautiful.
You know what? There was more good than bad, and if we both acted out a little bit and owe the other one an apology, we gave those apologies. We both accepted them. To your asking about forgiveness, and the intent of the question is to suggest how thoughtful you are at dealing with things when you have done something you're not proud of. And that's a very good example. So I didn't say I needed to ask his forgiveness because I already did. And that's true of other people in my life as well.
Fair enough. And when you parted ways with the company later, he commented, John always knew quality and spoke a language that editorial people could understand. And that's a theme that, to back up what you said earlier, that's all you take away with it at the end of the day is a reputation. And from what I read and what I see, John, yours is pretty stellar. Here's the second thing that I thought you would come up with here. This is from the famous Hollywood Reporter interview. I'm not going to go into the details. It's all in the public domain. People can look at that if they want. But this is the quote. That's the day, of course. That there is no turning back. It's done. It's gone. It's public. It was miserable. I spent it mostly by myself in New York City. I cry sentimentally at movies, but I never cried personally. That is the only day that I cried. And I cried because I realised the profundity of what I'd done to myself, to my family, and that I'd given up the best job in sports on the planet. I regretted letting people down. I thought about all these people I love that worked with me and with whom we'd done great things. I think that's a wonderful quote, John, an absolutely wonderful quote. And we don't need to go into that. As I say, it's in the public domain, but if you want to talk about it, fire away.
Well, first of all, again, as you reflect on this, I did ask forgiveness for that. I publicly suggested that I was sorry I let people down. And I took responsibility for it, right? I acted inappropriately. And when confronted with that, by the way, I self-reported the whole incident to my company. So I did not try to run away. I did not try to fix it by doing something I would be embarrassed about later. I faced it head on. I took responsibility. It cost me my job. I resigned from that job voluntarily. Doesn't mean I might not have done that in advance of, I might have jumped off the diving board before somebody pushed me, but nevertheless I did. And I feel that absolves me of having to ask in a profound way. I sort of took this question as you look back now, what things have you not asked forgiveness for that you should have? I feel like it's been, again, it's an ethos of mine that I take responsibility for when I have made mistakes. I don't mind saying I was wrong, and I did that in that instance. Again, I think those are two astute observations in terms of when I did create circumstances under which I needed to ask forgiveness, but I did that. And do I have unresolved ones? I mentioned one to you before that will always remain unresolved, but those two things I feel like have been resolved and resolved appropriately.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second one. What's the deal you wish you hadn't done?
I thought about this, and I have to confess I did some deals that I would like to have done slightly differently. I certainly made some deals with human beings to come work for me, or some deals where I separated people from the company that I have a little regret about. But I try not to live too much in regret. It doesn't really do much. We just talked about forgiveness. You ask for forgiveness so you can relieve yourself of regret, right? If I had never spoken to Bill Simmons, I would still regret that Bill and I were estranged. We're not estranged. Had I not said to the employees, gee, I let you down, I would have regret. We did a phone business at ESPN that was not successful. Do I regret it? No, it was a good experience. And usually deals are intertwined, right? It's hard to take a deal and say that deal sits outside of everything else that's intertwined with, and I wish I could pull that one out by itself and not have done it. But gee, if we hadn't done the phone, we wouldn't have gotten the people in the company who understood mobile, and we wouldn't have then rocketed to the lead of sort of mobile technology, phone content, it actually turned out to have a good thing. I always say I have a dinner party question, which I didn't make up, but I can't tell you who told it to me the first time, which is to ask yourself, what age would you like to be if you had to pick an age to be? And this actually arose, I think, originally as some kind of religious conversation I was having with somebody about heaven. And by the way, I've just been reading Gilead again by Marilyn Robinson, which is a fabulous book. And in it, the lead protagonist, John Ames, tries to think about it. He has a 7-year-old son, he's dying, and the book is a letter to his 7-year-old son who will never know him. He's a minister, so he ponders, gee, when I go to heaven and my son comes to heaven, will I be a 70-year-old man?
Great
which
question.
is what I am, and will he be a 7-year-old boy? Or will we be peers? Will we both be in sort of a prime of life? So a great question to ask people at a dinner party is, what age of your life would you like to be forever? So you're going to go to heaven and you get to be 23 forever or 42 forever or 60 forever, but it comes with everything that you experience at that age, meaning if you suggest you want to be 23 because you felt better than you ever felt physically, well, my children weren't born when I was 23. So would I wish my children away? No. Took me not long because I am a tiny bit dense sometimes, but here I wasn't dense, to realize there's a right answer to that question, and that is now. Right now. I would like to be, I'm 69. So if I had to pick a year, I'd pick now. My children are born. I think I'm wiser than I was at 68 or 48 or 43. Financially, I'm better off than I was at some point before. I wouldn't wish, the rash answer is, I want to be that vigorous young woman or that vigorous young man that I was. That's great. But would you like to give up the wisdom you've accumulated in the last 40 years? The knowledge,
the
would you
trade-off.
like to give up?
That's the trade-off.
So I thought about that when I was thinking about this question, which is, I don't regret much. Even the things we just talked about, I had to ask forgiveness for. Because if you go back and say, I would rather not have made that mistake that cost me my job, well then, I don't know. It's like Back to the Future, right? The Michael J. Fox movie. If you go mess with the past, you don't know what your present would be. And I'm happy in the present. So I don't want to regret anything in the past. So I actually don't have any big deal I wish I hadn't done.
Great answer, really great answer. But again, something I thought that could come up. It wasn't a deal, but in some ways it was, because everything's a deal. You decided to go to the Zone, which, on the outside made a huge amount of sense at the time. But if one's looking at it now, one could say, maybe that could have been done better. Maybe roles could have been defined better up front. Maybe they could have used John Skipper's skills and the market they were trying to break into, i.e. America, a lot better. So I'm asking you, clarifying that up front in a better way with the management there that were principally B2B guys, and you had a much more consumer, maybe not B2C yet, you were getting there, but certainly B2B2C. Do you think that if you had spent a little time more at the start working out what your role was going to be, it would have been more of a success?
I think you are accurate that ultimately, I don't regret going to work for the Zone because it allowed me to be front and center at the company that was kind of first to be a pure play streaming service in sports. That is where I thought sports media was going to go. It is where it has gone. I had the great experience of being there and accumulating a fair amount of knowledge about what it means to go from being a sports media company that someone else distributes, that someone else take care of the customers, someone else does the marketing. We did all that. So I got to learn what's different about it. I got to live in London. I met some interesting people. I've remained friendly with Len Blavatnik, which has been good for me. I made some friends. I'm still close. We were at your Como symposium with Joe Markowski, who's become a good pal of mine. We're doing some things together. I worked with Lindsay Cohen, who I met at DAZN. I'm currently working with Matt Drew, who I met at DAZN. So I don't regret the totality of it. Do I wish going in I had clarified the roles a little more, understood a little bit more about it? Yeah. And there was sort of three. There was Simon Denyer, who was the CEO. I was the chairman. And Len, of course, is the owner. And I had ultimately a different vision than Len had, and ultimately a different vision than Simon had. It's why I left. I signed a 3-year contract. I stayed 3 years. I resigned. Len and I had a good discussion about it. And I said, Len, you have to have a chairman who agrees with your vision for the company, and the president or the CEO and the chairman have to have the same vision. You should have some controls and some back and forth. That's good if you have some things you disagree on. But if at its heart, the core of what you believe about the company is different, then that doesn't work. So could I have settled a little more at the beginning that would have made that work better? Yeah, maybe. But again, I don't much regret going and doing it. It was a great experience. I had fun. I got to be in London a lot. I got to operate in Europe, which I loved. So I consider it a good experience. I regret, not that doing it, I regret that ultimately we weren't on all the same page about what our end game was. I believe the end game, and I believe, coin the phrase, we're going to be the Netflix of sports. I thought the end game there was be an aggregator of subscriptions. I did not believe we had the capital, the technology, or the people to actually build a global company and really be the Netflix of sports. I really thought what we should do was aggregate, get to about 25 million subs, and sell the company to Netflix or Disney or somebody else, because we were ahead, right? We had these subs. We were a streaming service, and it would be good right now if DAZN had, and DAZN is the predominant streaming service in Europe. That would be a good thing now that Netflix has decided to go into sports more. Be good to pick up 25 million sports streaming subscribers to add to your service. In my opinion, that was not their opinion. I did actually go talk to Netflix about it. It was not their opinion that that's where they wanted to go at that time. So it's possible that Simon was right, Len was right, I was wrong, but we'll never know, because you can't regret the past. You also can't go back and manipulate.
But let me ask you, John. Let me ask you, because this is very interesting, and I cannot let this pass. Because Shai was also at Como with us, and I think you were heavily involved in recruiting him. How do you recruit somebody when you don't know if the vision is agreed with everybody that he's going to be reporting to?
So when we were recruiting Shai, again, there's a hierarchy in judgment and decision-making, and Lynn and a guy named Lincoln Benet, who's at Access, had decided the kind of CEO they wanted. And so my only task at that time was to do the sort of vetting, have those conversations, try to recruit, and get Lynn the CEO he wanted. So I had no problem doing that. I understand the hierarchy.
Executing.
I ultimately was a paid employee to perform services. Lynn asked me to do that, and I did it. But I had a different opinion of exactly what we should be trying to accomplish, right? The end game. And I do think that was one of the things. We never had a well-articulated, here's where we're going to go and what we're going to do. I believe there's often been a desire to have that end game be an IPO. And I was fairly skeptical and am fairly skeptical of that. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I was fairly skeptical. And again, you put 6 horses in front of a wagon to pull it. They really need to be working and all running in the same direction, or you have chaos, or you have a overturned wagon.
So, yeah. So now that, you mentioned a little bit earlier the restraints of capital at your time and what that meant for the strategy, one could argue that with Surge and Saudi now on the cap table, there is in theory no restraint on capital or much less restraint. If you were still there, John, what would you be saying is that vision now? How big would the ambition be for DAZN if you were still there?
I'm not sure, even with more capital. And remember, Lynn deserves credit for putting in a lot of capital. He's put a lot of capital, and he has the wherewithal to do that. However, it is smart, and he wanted to before, and I think he's right, share that burden with some other investors, which he has now. I think that's a good thing. Did it change my mind about what they should do? No. What they should do is, right now in Europe, you do not have, there's an imbalance between the number of sports media companies and the desire for the important leagues in Europe, mostly the football leagues, to get more and more media rights. You get more and more media rights revenue when you have more than 1 or 2 bidders. And DAZN represents that possibility, right? In UK, you've got Sky and DAZN. And I still believe what they should do is go buy sports rights, understand that you're going to probably aggregate those subscribers at a loss for a while, but then you're going to sell that to a bigger company. My belief is that there are enough big media companies already. They're going to get bigger and bigger, and coming in as a streaming disruptor is probably not going to mean you're going to create a bigger company in Europe or wherever than Netflix or Amazon or Apple or Sky or ESPN. The question is going to be more consolidation now. I would still argue for putting yourself at DAZN in the position of being consolidated at some point and somebody valuing your having 25, 30, 35 million subscribers to add to their world domination, which is, I still believe they should be on the same track.
And for people listening to this, and I know there's a lot of younger viewers, listeners, it's very interesting here. Some people value companies based on revenues, profits. The best people value them on cash flow. But there's another way, which is what John's alluding to here, is the size of the asset platform that you're building that may be loss-making, but actually may be more valuable strategically as a bolt-on to somebody else. It's a very good lesson, that, and thank you for sharing it, John. Thank you. Third question. I think I know what you're going to answer this one. Who's the person you wish you had never met? Fire away here. This will be a good one.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I chatted on a couple of days ago, and I was in an airport stranded because of the
shutdown.
Well, you could argue about whether it's a shutdown or not. This is kind of an ancillary result of the shutdown. But the administration decided and suggested that it was completely a safety question. I believe that there are safety issues here. You've got air traffic controllers not being paid. You've got some not coming into work. So absolutely, I don't have the expertise to suggest that I know whether they needed to cut 10% of the flights. On the other hand, I'm cynical enough about this administration and the way they operate that I believe it was a created crisis. It was done to ensure that Thanksgiving would not be disrupted, which is the largest travel weekend of the year in the United States. And I believe that the administration correctly, as it turned out, calculated that the Democrats were not willing to bear the pain of this. I would argue it's because they are actually compassionate and were concerned about the people not getting their SNAP and WIC benefits, people not being forced to pay more money for their health care. And the Democrats said the pain here, which the Republicans are imposing upon the American people, so you'll hear my point of view there, is more than we're willing to be complicit in. It's a decision I disagree with, but that's neither here nor there. But I did give you a warning that I don't regret anybody much that I've met in sports, and I've not met Donald Trump. But I'm going to twist the question to say, is there somebody you wish you never knew existed? Yeah, Donald Trump. I wish Donald Trump didn't exist. And I'm sure that had I actually shaken his hand, I don't think I ever have, actually. I think what he's doing right now is reprehensible and awful. I think the suspension of due process in the United States, I think shooting boats out of the water in the Caribbean, I think sending federal troops to American cities, I think cutting people's food assistance, I think increasing people's health care benefits. We remain the only first world country that doesn't guarantee health care for people. That's shameful. So yeah, I'm a proud American, right? I said before I was an upwardly mobile American. I have always been proud. When I pull out my passport generally, in the rest of the world, I was always a proud American. I'm like, yeah, damn right, I'm an American. And we always got treated well, and people always, they might think we were a little vulgar. They might think that we're a little aggressive, lack a certain style. But America generally represented the hope of the world. As I believe it was John Calvin many years ago said, we're a city on a hill. We're not a city on a hill right now. We don't aspire to be great. We don't aspire to lead the world. We don't aspire to help people. People are dying in Africa because of the suspension of PEPFAR benefits. People are struggling in Latin America. I work for a nonprofit I'm on the board of a nonprofit in Latin America. We're helping people. We're spending the USAID money very efficiently, and the suspension of that is callous. And I think Donald Trump is not a empathetic human being. I don't think he cares about other people. I don't think he has a sense of history. I don't think he reads. I don't think he thinks. Do I wish that he was not president of the United States? I do. So I'm going to use this forum and your question because I think it's important that people in the United States, if they believe in due process, believe in our democratic republic, believe in actually having fair elections, we have to stand up and oppose this guy. He's an anomaly in the United States, and he's corrupt. And we should not have a corrupt leader, and we should have a leader who cares about all the people. He has publicly said he hates half the people in our country. I don't understand it. I don't understand. I don't understand calling people names and berating reporters and sicking the Justice Department on people that you don't like. And we'll ride this out, I hope, and turn things around in the future, but I will not mince words.
No, that's fine.
This.
That's fine.
Everybody's scared of Donald Trump for some reason. He's just
we'll
a
come
bully.
on to that in a minute. We'll come on to Trump and business in a minute. I've always had a view with politics and religion to not really speak about them too much because you can end up falling out. What I would ask you is this, John, to start off with. This quote from the start of the show: "A Southerner tightly wound with traditional values." Do you think your parents would have voted for Donald Trump as opposed to Kamala?
My parents?
Yeah.
No, hell no. They were Roosevelt Democrats. They were working class people. They have voted for Donald Trump? No, they were Roosevelt Democrats.
Okay. That's what I thought you would say. And I think a lot of us are Roosevelt Democrats. Maybe I'm a little bit too young for that phrase. I would call myself a Jed Bartlett Democrat from the West Wing. Do you not believe there is a view that guys like Trump, guys like Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, and others are around today because the Democratic Party has moved significantly to the left and left certain people scared of some of their views with no option? Is that not fair, John?
I don't think it's true. The Democrats, did they move too far to the left? No, they didn't move too far to the left. We don't really have a left in the United States. The assertion that Mondami is a communist, he's not a communist. He's a socialist. He's not really a socialist. Socialists would take and nationalize most of the large entities, right? Nobody's suggesting we do that. I think that the canceling of people was a dramatic mistake. I think the judgment that, and you heard me say at the beginning, I think judgment that many people, I'll call it progressive rather than left, that many progressive people went too far in going, we have a belief in how you should treat people. We think human rights, dignity, they have those point of view, and they didn't allow for, it's okay to have a different point of view. I don't agree with it, but if you happen to sincerely believe that abortion is inappropriate, I can respect that opinion. And I think many people didn't respect other people's opinions. They said, oh, Woody Allen did something that is inappropriate, so HBO shouldn't keep his movies available. I don't believe that. I think we went too far. Do I believe that the Democrats are being skewered on, and other parties around Europe are being skewered on things like transgender? Yeah, they are, but it's just a weaponized non-issue. If I run into one more person who's like, I don't want men going into the bathroom with my little girl, it's not an issue. Give me one instance of a time that has happened. And anybody who knows transgender people knows they don't go through the terrible difficulty that is. Think about having a disconnect between what your brain thinks you are and what your body is. That is not trivial, and it's not made up. And nobody turns 16 and goes, you know what? I think I'll just have some fun and be a man, or I'll have some fun and be a woman. I take that most people are utterly sincere when they go through that, because it is hard. Why would you make your life harder? And the idea that people are recruiting people to be like them is crazy. It's like, oh, I'm right-handed. I'm going to recruit everybody to be right-handed. Why would I care about that? I go back to what you talked about with forgiveness. You need forgiveness when you wrong other people. If somebody believes that they are in the wrong body, that doesn't cause any problem for me. Why would I care about that? That means they deserve compassion because their life is going to be harder. Nobody does that. I had a father-in-law who was a Baptist minister, and I remember asking my father-in-law one time, when did you decide to be heterosexual? And he said, what are you talking about? I said, do you remember being 13, 14 and going, do I want to be homosexual or heterosexual? He said, that's a false question because the natural state of nature is heterosexuality. It's not true. It's not the natural state of nature. Monkeys are homosexual. Bugs have sex with their own gender. And I don't believe that 10% of the population is just being obstinate and just trying to offend other people. They're trying to be who they are. Is that left? I don't think that's left. That's just human rights. Human rights aren't left or right. Having a right to health care is not left. Having a right to a place to sleep is not left or right.
If I was and I'm not, but if I was minded to push back hard on this, I would throw Bill Maher at you. He's on TV. He's clearly a lefty or a Democrat, whatever you want to call it. This is his quote, and he's very vocal about this now. Republicans have always lacked a chip for compassion, which we've talked about at length here. And Democrats used to have that. It's sad because it's not the Democrats we grew up with. He feels the party's moved from where it was. I mean, I'm centre-left as much as I think most people are that come from our background. There's some elements of the platform that with all the will in the world and with the same opinion I've got as you on Trump, I just can't get there, John. And I think there's a lot of left-leaning people are like that.
I don't really use left and right too much. I think people are progressive or conservative, right? They either believe we need to protect what has been or we need to forge into the future with more of something. I think we need to forge into the future with more. This is all, I'll be sorry for this, but I'm going to go kind of macro for a second on you, right? It was only 300,000 years ago that people in Africa stood up on two legs. And that was where the first sapiens emerged, stood up on two legs. That was 300,000 years ago in what may be a 17 billion year old universe. That means in the last 2 seconds of a year, sapiens have existed. Only in the last few hundred years have those sapiens been able to forget about survival and think about living and living comfortably, right? 1,000 years ago, most people didn't have enough to eat, and people were killed by three things: starvation, violence, and plague. Right now, people are killed mostly by cancer, dementia, and heart ailments. And there's enough food to feed the world. You can argue it's not distributed very well, but there is enough food to feed the world. And there's enough money for everybody to get medical attention, have a place to live, get an education, if we could distribute it properly. When you're in that situation, now you no longer have to fight over a gazelle, right? We're built for competition. You could even argue violence. We're tribal. Why are we tribal? Because when you're out on a savannah and you're with 78 other people in your tribe and you get a gazelle, everybody eats and everybody lives. If a group of people from a different tribe come over the hill and they want to take your gazelle, you got to fight them. And we got that in us, the collective unconscious, our genetic makeup. We got that in us. But what we have now is a situation where we've gotten to the top of the food chain. We have plenty. If we work together, there's plenty for everybody. And I think that people on the left want that to be the case. And I think people on the right are still living in that world where it is, I give you part of my gazelle, I'm going to have less of the gazelle. And I do think that is the fundamental difference between right and left, is the people on the right are trying to preserve what they regard as things that matter. And people on the left are trying to say, let's expand the universe of people who actually get to benefit from this. But again, you could argue that that's a little bit Pollyannish, and that the world is really meaner than that.
No, not at all.
But there is no doubt that's where Trump and I disagree. He thinks everybody's a winner or a loser. That's right. That's right. He thinks everything is a win or a lose.
Yeah, it's zero-sum game.
It's okay. He's still trying to protect his gazelle. And he's going to say, if I have to go to court to protect it, if I have to hurt somebody, I'm going to protect my gazelle.
Let me just keep on this, but slightly move it back to our sector a little bit. You may disagree with this, but I certainly have a view on this. And remember, I am Jed Bartlett. I am a Democrat. I may go over the other side of the aisle every so often, but I am a left-leaning, free education, free health. Right. However, and I think you know that I'm a fair guy. I've looked at the journal. You're a journalist by trade. I have looked at the great mastheads that we have had in the West for the last 50 years. 60 Minutes, the BBC, CNN, MSNBC, you know where I'm going with this, New York Times, The Economist. with all the fairness I believe that I own, I think they are no longer impartial. And I think that's tragic. John, what's your view on that?
I think that a goal of being objective is a fine one. I think it's a bit of in my opinion, it's a bit of a myth that there was a moment when you could be a journalist and not have a point of view. You could be a journalist and set your own beliefs aside. And I think the greatest journalistic enterprises have been great because they've had a breadth of points of view, right? And they weren't doctrinaire. And that allowed them to be fair. But I don't think it ever was the case. I mean, if you go out and you find a company dumping sludge in the river, there's not a, you must take a middle ground. You need to think about whether that company is creating jobs and doing things. You do, but you can still also, if your job is to hold truth to power and expose inappropriate things, that company, and if it's against the law, is breaking the law. They're doing something bad. There is no middle ground. People will say, gee, the New York Times is anti-Trump. Well, of course they're anti-Trump because they have ethics and they have beliefs. And I think actually they should be going after him more. I think they try too hard to be balanced. We must point out in an article about how awful it is that Trump is blowing boats out of the water in the Caribbean. On the other hand, it was true in 1856 that so-and-so did send the boats to Puerto Rico. It's like, quit.
John,
it's bad.
They're chopping up interviews and reorganizing them. That I'm talking about the BBC. You can't defend that, John. I think 60 minutes was the same.
But it is very different than actually coming on air and lying every day, which is what Fox News.
Listen,
News is
same
a
on the other
perpetrator
side. Same on the other side.
False so you got to deal with, is the New York Times better? Is CBS still a more reliable source of truth than Fox News? It is. So you got to go with what you got. Could they do better? Absolutely, they could do better. Should they be chopping up interviews? Not particularly. On the other hand, it's always been the case. William Randolph Hearst was the most powerful newspaper.
It happened to me once. One of my sports interviews, 20 years, was chopped up by the BBC. It was a nothing thing. It was sport, but it's always happened. It's always happened.
It has always happened. Look, for years, but one thing people don't understand very well is whoever the writer of a story does not create the headline, right? So headlines are frequently manipulated to try to get people to read them. So you read a headline. How often do you read a headline and then read the story and go, well, that's not actually what it said at all. But that's because somebody's writing a headline to try to get attention.
Listen, let's keep going on this thing about the media sector and Trump because it is very worrying. Let's take the example of Warner Brothers Discovery on the block. Probably will go to Paramount because it seems as if Paramount is in favour with this administration. Whereas the other potential bidder, Comcast and Brian Roberts, is not well liked by Trump. How much of a danger is it that our sector, which is ultimately the sector that bids for sports rights, is now only going to thrive if they kiss the ring?
Well, it's abominable. I mean, the President of the United States weighing in on mergers between companies and suggesting he's not going to approve mergers. They should only be approved or not approved relative to whether or not they create monopolistic enterprises, whether there's an inappropriate combination, whether it puts too much power in somebody's hands. To suggest that you're not going to approve the Walt Disney Company because ABC News is criticizing your administration, it's abominable. It's not what we stand for. There's supposed to be processes. You're not supposed to. Trump is asserting the powers of an emperor or a king or a dictator. that, gee, he should get to use the Justice Department. Now, he's claiming it's because Biden used the Justice Department. But there is a difference, which is Trump is a criminal. He does. Anybody who suggests he doesn't lie and cheat and steal and hurt other people is not paying attention. He has been convicted of a crime. Joe Biden was many things, but he was not a criminal. And the assertion that the Biden family criminal business, Hunter Biden was not a admirable individual. His behavior was inappropriate. He did exactly what Eric and Donald Trump are doing. And I think that's reprehensible in both cases, which is you're taking advantage of your father's position to try to enrich yourself. That's Hunter Biden did that. So is Donald Jr. and Eric. And is it any better? It's probably worse because they're slightly more effective than Hunter Biden was.
Let me ask something again, a little bit more philosophical, but it's all in the same theme. What happened back in the day with you? There was a whole lot of hypocrisy around that. What annoys me, rather about being partisan, I think I do understand both sides. What I don't like to see is big tech now, the platforms, seemingly just caving their position and changing their position because the wind has changed. If you were, you still are, active in all of this, what do you do? Do you get all idealistic in this podcast, or do you play the pragmatic game and say, I need to do what I need to do. I need to look after my shareholders. What do you do?
You ultimately had to have a ethical, it goes without saying you have a legal compass, but you also have to have an ethical compass about, is what I am doing wrong? And I would argue, by the way, if you mollify Donald Trump, you know what that gets you? That gets you the right to mollify him again, because the Democrats mollified Donald Trump by passing the big ugly bill, right? What did that get them? It got them the opportunity to capitulate once again when they didn't want to pass the continuing resolution. But they didn't learn the lesson because they just capitulated again. So they capitulated once, then capitulated again. What is that going to buy them? It is going to buy them the opportunity to capitulate again. When the Walt Disney Company settled for $16 million for the Stephanopoulos interview, not only did they insult their own talent when they should have backed him up, but they said, but I've got to bring value to shareholders, so it's $16 million, it's not going to hurt me, but it does hurt you because Trump comes right back and says, well, you got to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. You know, I told you got to pay me for something that they shouldn't have paid him for. Now they say, well, you're going to have to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. So they do that. They got to do a third thing. And it doesn't buy you anything. So you might as well stand up for your own principles. Is it awful what Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, among others, have done in mollifying the president and kissing his butt and going to the White House and sitting there, Tim Cook giving him a gold phone? I mean, really? That's what you're going to do? Nobody's willing to go there and say, Mr. President, you're wrong. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. And we're not going to agree. I went to Colombia. I'm angry that they settled with the president. Now, he can withhold a lot of federal funds, but once you settle with the president, he's going to come by and ask you to do something again that's unethical or inappropriate. You know, he went to the 8 schools and said, I'll give you money. This is all about greed. And for the tech guys, it's all about greed. Now, they would argue, no, it's value to shareholders, but there is a point where you even have to say to your shareholders, we're going to do the best we can, but we are not going to agree to settle lawsuits that set a precedent that are wrong. We are not going to take people off the air because the president doesn't like them. We're not going to change, whoever runs CBS Sports. CBS News. We're going to put somebody in there who the president likes. I love, of course, the president keeps talking about the woman. I'm trying to remember her name, Barry Weiss. I may get that wrong, but I think it's Barry Weiss. And he keeps saying, I hear she's good. I hear she's good. It's like, You hear she's good. I love that. He was arguing, talking about the Binance guy who he pardoned. Well, he didn't even know who he is, but I hear he's good. I guess that's all you need. You just need, if the wind wafted in and it sounded like you should pardon Rudy Giuliani, I guess you would go with that.
I really love you. You know that there's a lot of stuff in here I don't agree with, but I just love.
It's okay.
I just, that's what we said earlier. It's okay. I just love where you're coming from, and this is the point of the confessional. You're coming from the place, the right heart. Let's move this on a little bit. Number 4, what train do you think you missed or were late for in life?
That's interesting. I think willingly I'm going to be late for the AI train, right? And it just has to do with my lifetime has been an unbelievable time of change, right? I grew up with 3 television stations, one college football game on. I grew up with a party line in my house, right? Meaning that when you picked up the phone, the neighbors might be on the phone. And I've had to adapt to things and go, okay, including adapting to the digital, being the digital delivery of information. And there comes a moment when you say you're going to miss a train. I'm going to willingly miss the AI train because I don't need to. And you only have so much capacity to change and change over. You've got to be adaptive. But I'm going to sit out the AI. I like writing. And yeah, I could probably go into ChatGPT and say, write me a note, and it'll get better and better.
That would be soul destroying for people like us. Soul destroying. It's an admission that you get no added value anymore. And I can't take that.
I can't take it, but for a minute, and this is why people can disagree and have fun and have good discussions. For a minute, if we assume that AI is going to get to a state where it can literally write a better memo than you or I don't think it can right now. But if you or I write it, we receive benefit from that. It means we have to think it through. We have to consider it. If it just spits out of a computer, you're not learning anything. You're not learning how to analyze information. You're not learning how to have a turn of phrase that's more effective. And those things keep your mind active. They make you smarter and make you make better decisions. I used to always, a lot of times when I was trying to make a hard decision, I would get a pen out and a piece of paper, very old school, and start writing down almost like that classic, here are the benefits, here are the detriments. And the act of writing them down and looking at them helps you make that decision. I guess, and maybe in 7 cases out of 10, maybe someday it'll be 9 cases out of 10, the computer could have made my decision for me by doing
John,
all the...
And I'm using some of the things you've said, and I've got quotes here for this. AI one day could probably do this interview for you on the points that you've raised about Trump and all of that kind of stuff. It will never, in my opinion, be able to communicate the empathy and the smile on your face and the humor that you had when you were saying, it will never. So the future of journalism is in personality. And, you know, I always say that. And on that, here's a little supplementary question, because I've always wanted to ask you this. Whether it's a song or a book, which one do you identify with most that represents you the best? It can be a song, because you did Rolling Stone. It can be a song or a book.
I actually would use Bob Dylan, and I'd use a number of songs, right? If there were songs, remember a lot of who you are is formed when you're young. And when I was young, I adored Bob Dylan. And I remember those early records, and whether it was, you know, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, or there's a great song called The Ballad of Hattie Carroll, which is a song about a gentleman named William Zinzinger who murdered a black woman and got away with it. And those songs inspired me, right? Blowing in the Wind, while feels cliche-like right now, it's like reading Great Gatsby, right? It kind of feels, it's become so much of a fabric of culture that you forget how brilliant it was when he sang that song. So the songs of Bob Dylan, If I had to name a book, Beloved by Toni Morrison would be a good one, right? It's a beautiful book, will make you cry. It's the most existential problem in life, which is, what do you do to help your children lead a better life? And the woman in Beloved has to make the hardest decision possible, right? She ends up having to make the decision that Abraham had to make with Isaac, which is also in a Bob Dylan song, by the way. God said to Abraham, kill me a son. Abe said, man, you must be putting me on. God said, what? Abe said, anyway. Those songs really spoke to me when I was a kid. And books, a wide variety of books really spoke to me as a kid, too. It's you've just hit the two things that matter the most to me, music and books.
Really, to me as well. But, an interesting thing about Dylan, I didn't know that was your guy, but obviously it's everybody's guy. The jester wearing a coat he borrowed from James Dean. But Dylan was asked. Row. Yeah, Dylan was asked. I don't know when it was, but it wasn't at the start of his career. It was well on. All this early stuff, and the journalists asked, well, why can't you go back to those places? Why can't you write other songs like that? And his reply was, you think I don't want to. Do you think there is this moment, whether you call it a purple patch or a moment where you're in tune with the world, you've got a muse, as a creative process? There's some moments where people are inspired and then they go dry. You've seen that in your career. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that it is most frequent that people do have this period of great creativity and invention, and they just sort of tap into something in the zeitgeist, and there's some magical combination of what's going on in the world and what they care about and what they do. And Dylan arrived in New York, right, in the folk scene, and he used that to write some of the great songs of the 60s and 70s. I would argue, by the way, that Bob Dylan is one of the few artists who actually had multiple purple patches, right? You had the purple patch of Freewheeling and Times They Are Changing, and that. But then you had the second patch of Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61, and Bringing It All Back Home. Then you had another Blood on the Tracks phase. You had Time Out of Mind. He's like Picasso, right? He had all these periods, and the songs became more complex, but they're still songs that are inspiring. When he wrote Hurricane, he's still doing the same thing as a ballad of Hattie Carroll. He still does it on his records. He had that purple patch, which basically he reinvented Americana. It's jug band music, it's Tex-Mex, it's folk, it's jazz, it's skiffle, it's everything, and something like Time Out of Mind combined into a new American music. It's astonishing. And it's like saying to Picasso, wouldn't you like to go back and paint some more of those Rose period paintings? And Dylan gave one interesting answer, which is, don't you think I'd like to? I would argue he still did. But so you wouldn't say to Picasso, why don't you go back and do some more of those Rose Harlequin pictures instead of this Cubist mess? But in fact, he was following his muse, right? He wanted to explore new things. Lots of great artists have a very insular point of view about what they're doing. It happens to land with the public, but you tend to create great art when you are following your muse, as opposed to, I'm going to write. And by the way, you're almost back to what you were talking about with AI. There are going to be plenty of paintings made by AI. It's going to be plenty of music made by AI, and a lot of it is going to be great. You can write a great pop song with AI, but you can't go from doing Revolver, which is the Beatles record, to doing Sgt. Pepper's with AI, right? That took human beings who could actually think, okay, here's what I want to do. Now, AI can replicate, probably make you Sgt. Pepper's 2, but it can't make Sgt. Pepper's 1.
That's so insightful, John. It's so insightful. And that's why your background is so interesting. Fifth question. What sliding door were you just in time for? I'm tempted to say the media bull market. That would be the easiest one.
No, I think, look, it's in some ways, it's not that you took advantage of a sliding door. There's sliding doors your whole life, right? There's new things coming out. There's disruption. And I think I adapted pretty well to all of them. Just like I had the question about what's the best year of your life, I would argue that it's possible that I was born in the perfect time and place, right? I was born in 1955 in the middle of the baby boom generation, which is the post-World War II generation, where after the World War II, the United States, because of the two big oceans and the late entry into the war, we didn't have our industrial capacity damaged. We didn't have cities to rebuild. We didn't have the casualties that many of the countries had, or the devastation of the infrastructure. So the U.S. soared after. In fact, the war was good for the U.S. because we built industrial capacity, and then we had this astonishing economic revolution where the U.S. became the center of the world, center of the world's growth, 25% of the world's GDP. I was born right in the middle of that.
The wonder years. Those are the wonder years, John. Those are the wonder years.
And I've seen astonishing change. That change, now some of that change appears to be difficult for us to think about going forward, right? But for me, it's great. Cars are great to ride around in when you're not ending up with a hole in the ozone. Telephone, these new telephones, that are computers, I carry around. So I think generally the sliding doors that I saw open were great and overwhelmingly beneficial. What we're seeing now is a little bit of a correction that, there's some problems with some of those sliding doors. But I feel like I was really lucky. Growing up in the United States in that era, being in fabulous industries, by the way, being a person of privilege, which I was, there's nothing wrong with being a person of privilege at all.
What do you mean a person
white,
of privilege?
I'm tall.
Oh, come on, John. You're not going to give that privilege thing. Your dad was a postman. You've got no privilege, John. You did it because you're great. Don't give me the privilege thing. Come on.
I am content that I took advantage of my circumstances in a way that was in the top quartile. But I still had privilege. I'm a tall, white, heterosexual American man. You can't be more privileged than that. The door's open. There's a great old American phrase about CEOs, which is get me a 41 long, right? That's what a CEO looks like, right?
And the president.
Tall, white man, thin. Obama, was, I think, a 41 long, but he didn't have the privilege of being white. And privilege is not a bad word. There is privilege. It doesn't mean I was handed everything. You could have been in my position and not succeeded. But you could have also been in my position, and if you had some disabilities, you didn't speak well, by the way, it is harder to be an African American. People don't want to, I don't know why people don't admit that. It's harder. It's why I believe DEI is a good thing. You try to bring the circle bigger. And there's not this division with, Pete Hegseth, who of course is incompetent. So I love to be lectured by Pete Hegseth about we're not doing any more of that DEI. By the way, if the most qualified person was going to be placed in charge of the U.S. military, it would not be Pete Hegseth. He's completely unqualified, and he is making a mess and will make a bigger mess in the future. And he's a privileged person who is squandering his privilege with a lack of compassion about other people. By the way, he's talking about no more dudes in dresses. When did they ever wear dresses in the military? Are they wearing dresses in the English military now? I don't think so. Last time I checked, everybody.
But let me
again
with full spirit of debate. My kids have recently been into the job market and even the application for university market. And one evening, my blood ran cold at the dinner table when they were saying, of course, we all put non-binary in the gender question now because it increases our chances of getting in. Surely that can't be right, John. They're gaming the system to give themselves a chance.
Again, in the spirit of cordial disagreement. I do not believe somebody putting non-binary on a form increases their likelihood of being hired. And all it does is slightly correct. You think that somebody walking in who was born male but is in a dress has a better chance to get a job than a white, tall, heterosexual man who walks in for the interview? I'm going to get the job every time. Your boys are going to get the job. I don't buy the, oh my gosh, this is awful, I can't get into this school, because there's a great moment. We made a great film when I was at ESPN called OJ Made in America. I don't know whether you've seen it or not.
I have.
It's 7 hours and 43 minutes long. So the startling moment in that film that made me get chills when I saw it the first time is when we get two of the jurors, both black women, and the statute of limitations is out. So we asked them, did you know he was guilty? And the woman says, yeah, we know he was guilty. And as a white person, when OJ was acquitted, I was furious. It's crazy. This is not right. And when we asked the question, well, why did you vote to acquit if you knew he was guilty? And the woman said, we got one. We got one. Because you have been allowing white people to kill black people for a long time and then acquitting them because they're white people killing black people. By the way, the police who beat Daryl, I can't remember the name of the guy they beat up on video. It was on video. They beat him up. They were acquitted. Why were they acquitted? Because they were white policemen. And they got one. People have been walking into job interviews for years, and if you were white, if you were me.
That goes against what you said earlier, always do the right thing. That's getting back to, what about this, what about that?
That's okay. This is exactly what we were talking about before. We believe different things. It's okay. What I believe is, as a white male, tall white male, heterosexual American, I'm starting the 100-yard dash at the 40-yard line. So, and I just am. While I went to better schools, I didn't encounter any prejudice. I didn't walk in ever to anybody's office and have them go. Remember, I grew up in the segregated South. When I was young, if I walked down the sidewalk and a black man was coming down the sidewalk, he had to step off the sidewalk and let me pass. A 11-year-old boy. He was a black man, because that is the privilege that our society gave me. And that is the burden they put on that person, to be subservient, to be a second-class citizen, to not get the opportunities I got. And if you create a little corrective mechanism that says, well, we're going to make sure that 1 out of every 10 opportunities goes to somebody who's not white, male, tall, American, that's okay with me. I had a very hard incident, and I'll use it. My son, as a writer, he worked for GQ. He wrote many stories about athletes and entertainers. He had an assignment which he wanted very badly, and the editor told him, the athlete you want to interview said they want a black writer. So, yeah, he could say that's not fair. But the fact is, all it did was provide a correction. It wasn't fair. It made everybody happy, but my son had the good understanding of his privilege and the fact that he even was already there. By the way, most of the people at GQ were white. And you do know that everybody who hires somebody looks at the people across from them and goes, wow, they look like me. So it's an affirmation of my skills and talent that I'm going to hire somebody who looks like me. So all you're trying to do is correct it. If you could get to a world where people walked in and they got hired exactly on merit, that would be good. But when you don't have that world, you have to have some corrective mechanisms.
I'm going to throw your Ralph Waldo Emerson quote.
Because this is Hobgoblin of Small Minds.
Yes. And I think what we are saying in this podcast is that you always need to think the other side. I mean, I'm leaving this podcast thinking, okay, maybe my view on DEI's not right. I don't think I'm wrong, but I might be, because John said that I should think again. And that's important. For me to be consistent every single day, and say, no, I believe this, I believe that. That is the hobgoblin of small minds. So, I think that's important, John, that's the thing. I don't want to get into this anymore, but I think that's the thing about Kirk, that you could disagree with everything he said, but he was debating. This
is actually something to celebrate. You and I are discussing. People assume, think of how many times in your life have you convinced somebody they were wrong about something that they held deeply?
Deeply never.
Almost never. You don't change people's minds.
At the margins you can, John, at the margins.
At the margins you can.
That's how you win elections. That's how you win elections.
Yeah. And I've been wrong about things, right? I was kind of right with the progressives in, you should not be allowed to come speak at this university if you have views that are anti or misogynist. We're actually better off to listen to the person who says things we don't like and think about whether it ultimately confirms what we already believe or whether maybe it makes us think that what we believe already needs more nuance. It needs more complexity. And then you still have to be able to look across the table and say, I haven't heard anything that makes me think you're a bad guy.
That's
right?
the point. That's the point. I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from.
I will not acknowledge that it's okay to say, gee, when I get in a plane and the pilot in the cockpit is black, I worry about whether they got that job. That's not okay. That's not an okay thing to think. By the way, it just proves the privilege, because if that pilot was white, you wouldn't think that. That is what that person, that's why you have to have some corrective mechanisms, because there are a lot of people like Charlie Kirk who go, the person's black, they got the job because of DEI. How do you know that? By the way, the white person might well have got the job because they know somebody, right? Because they know somebody. This administration, of course, is, the amazing thing is they spend all their time talking about we're not going to have DEI, and then they hire dopes. They hire people who are completely unqualified to do what they're doing. That is not the best way to, if you told me I don't believe in DEI, so we're not going to think about that at all. Okay, great. So if you hired nothing but great people, that would be a little more convincing than we're going to get rid of DI, but then we're going to hire a whole bunch of sycophants, a whole bunch of, sort of mediocre managers, bad leaders. Then you haven't actually proved anything. Great. Prove to me that you're just going to hire the best people, and then show me you've hired the best people, and they're all white males. By the way, Trump has hired 2 out of his 100 most important appointees, 2 of them are black. I would put a little DI on that. If you need to be not only get highly qualified people, you need to have some representation of who the American people are.
Yeah. John, last question. I've taken so much of your time and you've been so generous and so kind. This is probably an easy one. What person do you owe most to in life, but you didn't or haven't yet told them enough?
Well, the person I owe most to in my life was my dad. And my opportunity to tell him that is pretty limited because he's died in 2000. But this will get back to your quote about being slightly tightly wound, growing up in a certain kind of society. We didn't grow up in a society of hugging and men telling each other they loved each other. So I never told my father I loved him. He never told me overtly, I love you. I know he did, but my father set me a great example. My father was a postman. He worked hard. He taught me everything you've heard me espouse, I espouse because of what my dad taught me. My dad taught me to be kind to other people. He taught me not to step off that side, not to make that black man step off the sidewalk. He told me, as soon as you see that, you step off, keep walking. And when you get close to them, say, how are you doing today, sir? That's what he taught me to do. And I've tried to do that throughout my life, which is, I think being privileged is, I didn't I was born where I was born. I have nothing to apologize for unless I use that privilege to humiliate other people or to take advantage of other people. I tried to use my privilege to open doors for as wide a variety of people as possible.
What did he feel about all your success? Because he lived long enough to see you get to the top of that mountain.
Well, he barely did. He barely did, Roger, which makes it even more poignant, right? That's why your question touched me, because it made me think about that. And I'm like, it's an easy answer for me. It's my dad. And when my dad died, I was just going to Seattle, Washington to manage the ESPN digital assets. So this is well beyond. My father was in that position, as was my mom. Again, lots of people end up in this position, particularly in sort of upwardly mobile situations. They had no idea what I did, right? They didn't understand it in the least.
Exactly.
So did he understand? No. Was I having some success? Yeah. But my big success came after my dad died, right? I made dramatic amount more money than I had before. I had led more people. I was more high profile. And my dad missed most of that. My mom saw it. She was very proud. She did think that I should spend more time with her. And despite being very proud of the big job I had, she didn't understand what I did. And she did tell me almost every time I saw her, you know, you need to be around more. And when you're here, you need not to get on the phone. And I was
that itself is a lesson.
Understand?
Yeah, that's a lesson in itself. It's in itself. You mentioned very, very generously your previous marriage. I don't know anything about that at all, and I don't want to. But I did meet your current wife, and that's the answer I thought you would also give here, because that woman is a force of nature. I had the pleasure, as you know, of sitting beside you for over an hour, maybe 2 hours in Como at dinner over the lake, and the funnel, the hose pipe of positive energy is quite extraordinary from that woman, and you know, I can imagine why you're with her. You know, it's truly is astonishing. No, I'm not going to go there. It's not my business. But I just want to say thank you for bringing her to Como and sharing her with all of us.
She will. I want to mention that my current partner is Carmen Busquets, so I'll mention her name. She will not mind. She's a force in. Has been a force in fashion. She cares and does a lot of philanthropic work now. She does a lot of work in sustainability, and I have learned a great deal from Carmen, including having less judgment. My first answer had a lot of that comes from her, which is don't judge people. You can have a disagreement with them, but don't think that because somebody has a point of view that's different than yours, one, that they're wrong, or two, that they don't deserve the same empathy, compassion, patience that you do, or that people who think like you doesn't, you know, you got to not be judgmental. She's a little bit more of the sort of Buddhist, don't judge people, don't get yourself too worried about the things you can't do anything about. You saw me the other day. I was very upset about things that I can't do anything about. The plane not being there on time. Normal. The Democrats not standing up to Trump. The benefits for SNAP running out. I can't do anything, but I still, because of my dad, so you got my dad as the person who had the most influence in this part of my life. It certainly is the case that Carmen has had more influence than anybody else, as well as my two sons, Clay and Nick. I've learned a lot of things from them, and that is it's an interesting thing that happens in life. You take care of your kids. At some point, they're going to take care of you. I did take care of kids, and at some point, you're going to learn more from them than they learn from you. And I'm already at that point.
Yeah, me too, actually. Me too. Listen, John, one of the things that we should say before we end this is that you and I aren't that different in terms of value set. You know, my father worked the line at Chrysler, so he was the same. and he taught me all the same stuff. And in fact, many times when I was getting a little bit ahead of myself because I was doing okay, he would slap me down in that old working class way. So, you know, if you're a working class kid that went to state school in Scotland, you're going to believe in a whole lot of socialist things. I guess I would say the only difference between you and I is that you have held more of those ideals and I've let most of them go to pragmatism and having to defend my castle in a very cruel world. That would be the only difference. I think you and I are pretty similar, John.
You know, the great, I may not be able to quote it exactly, but I think it was Winston Churchill who said, if you're not, I think he may have used the liberal conservative word, so I will. If you're not a liberal when you're 25, you got no heart. If you're not a conservative by the time you're 50, you got no head. And
so what happened to you?
I want to try to keep both, right, to as much extent as possible. And usually you do get more conservative as you get older. But I also have a little bit of a bifurcated point of view. I am more progressive on social issues, and I've held that. I've become more conservative on certain financial issues and certain issues of sort of world power. And right, I'm not quite so quixotic. I don't actually want the United States to tilt at too many windmills. You do have to have some degree of pragmatism. I would actually like something closer to a balanced budget. And even though some of that money, if better spent, would help people, you do have to sort of live within your means. But our means are pretty significant. Anybody suggesting the United States doesn't have the money to do the things it should do, they do. We simply spend too much of it on things we don't have to do. I'm old enough. I do not take Medicare. I do not take Social Security. I'm not suggesting I may not take them at some point, but I don't need them. As a country, we should be more pragmatic. I don't need to ever get Social Security. They're going to pay it to me at some point, but so far I've told them, don't pay me. I just really don't need it. Maybe I'll save it till I need it, because I do intend to spend my money.
John, I'm going to wrap this up with something you just said out here, because it's right. Quixotic and tilting at windmills, perfect for a literary graduate and a cultured man like yourself. Thank you so much for coming on The Confessional. It's been a real treat. Thank you, John Skipper.
I've enjoyed it very much, Roger. Thank you. Appreciate it.